The rain drummed against the windows of my apartment as I stared at the large rectangular package leaning against my door. No delivery truck had come up the narrow street. I would have heard it. Someone had left this here deliberately, quietly, like a secret. My name was written across the brown paper in familiar handwriting. The same careful script I'd watched form countless coffee orders and inventory lists over the past 8 months. Marcus. My heart did that thing it always did when I thought about him. A flutter that made me feel like a teenager again, despite being 28. I dragged the package inside, my hands already trembling with anticipation. Working with Marcus at the little independent bookshop had been both heaven and hell. Heaven because I got to see him every day, to watch the way he tucked his dark hair behind his ear when he was concentrating, to hear his genuine laugh when customers told him their stories. Hell because every accidental touch, every lingering look, every moment of connection felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, wanting to jump but too afraid of the fall. The paper fell away to reveal a canvas, and I sucked in a breath so sharp it hurt. It was a painting, not just any painting, but one that captured something I'd never told anyone about. The scene was my favorite spot in the city, a small hidden garden behind the old cathedral, where I went to think and sketch when the world felt too loud. But this wasn't painted from observation. This was painted from memory, from someone who had noticed me there, who had seen me in my most private moments. The detail was extraordinary. Every weathered stone bench, every climbing rose, every shaft of light filtering through the ancient oak trees was rendered with loving precision. But it was a figure in the corner that made my breath catch, a man sitting on the bench with a sketchbook, his face turned toward the light, peaceful and unguarded. Me. A note was taped to the back of the canvas. I've been watching you find peace in that garden for months. I wanted to give you a way to carry it with you, always. M. My hands shook as I propped the painting against my couch. Marcus had been watching me. More than that, he'd been moved enough by what he saw to spend what must have been weeks recreating it. I'd had no idea he could paint, no idea he'd even noticed my disappearances during lunch breaks. The next morning, I arrived at the bookshop early, my heart hammering against my ribs. Marcus was already there, shelving the new arrivals with his characteristic precision. He looked up when I entered, and I saw vulnerability flash across his features before he quickly looked away. Marcus. My voice came out rougher than intended. He straightened, still not quite meeting my eyes. Did you get the... It's beautiful. The words felt inadequate. I don't know what to say. A flush crept up his neck. You don't have to say anything. I wanted you to know that someone sees you. Really sees you. The simple honesty in his voice nearly undid me. I crossed the space between us, close enough to see the gold flecks in his brown eyes, close enough to smell the faint scent of paint that still clung to his fingers. How long have you been watching me? I asked softly. Since the first week you started coming to the garden. I was walking back from lunch and saw you there, and you just looked so complete. Like you belonged there. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I'd grown to love. I started taking that route every day, hoping to catch glimpses of you. I'm sorry if that's... It's not creepy, I interrupted. It's the most romantic thing anyone's ever done for me. Hope flickered in his eyes. Romantic. Marcus, I've been half in love with you for months. I just never thought. I didn't know if you... You're half in love with me? His voice was barely above a whisper. More than half, if I'm being honest. The smile that spread across his face was like sunrise. Good, he breathed, because I'm completely gone for you. We stood there in the morning, light streaming through the bookshop windows, grinning at each other like fools. The confession hung between us, precious and fragile and real. I have something else for you, he said suddenly, disappearing into the back room. He returned with a small wrapped package, his cheeks pink with embarrassment. It's not much, but... Inside was a set of professional-grade sketching pencils and a leather-bound sketchbook. I noticed you always sketch with that old pencil stub, he explained. I thought you might like something better. I flipped through the blank pages, imagining all the possibilities they held. Will you be my first subject? I'd be honored. That evening, we found ourselves in my apartment, takeout containers scattered across the coffee table, the painting propped where we could both see it. I'd been sketching Marcus as he told me about his art, about the paintings he created in his tiny studio apartment, about the way he saw the world in colors and light. I've never told anyone about my painting, he admitted, curled up on the opposite end of my couch. It felt too personal, too vulnerable. What changed? He looked at me with such tenderness that my chest tightened. You. Watching you in that garden, seeing how you weren't afraid to be alone with yourself, to be quiet and thoughtful in a world that demands constant noise. It made me want to be brave, too. I set down my sketchbook and moved closer to him. Can I see more of your work? Now. The walk to his apartment was charged with anticipation. We didn't touch, but I felt the electricity between us like a live wire. His studio was small but carefully organized, with canvases stacked against the walls and the scent of oil paint heavy in the air. I've never shown these to anyone, he said as he began pulling out paintings. Each one took my breath away, not just for their technical skill, but for the emotion they captured. Landscapes that seemed to pulse with life, portraits that revealed the soul of their subjects, abstract pieces that felt like looking into someone's dreams. Marcus, these are incredible. You could have galleries showing these. He shook his head. I don't paint for galleries. I paint for moments like this. For sharing something real with someone who matters. I matter. You matter more than you know. We ended up sitting on his studio floor, surrounded by his life's work, talking until the early hours of the morning. He told me about growing up feeling different, about the loneliness of keeping parts of himself hidden, about the fear that no one would ever truly see him. I shared my own struggles with vulnerability, my tendency to retreat into quiet spaces when the world felt too overwhelming. I think that's why I was drawn to you, he said as dawn began to lighten the windows. You're comfortable with solitude, but you're not running from connection. You're just selective about who gets to see the real you. And you want to see the real me? I want to see all of you. I want to know what makes you laugh, what makes you cry, what you dream about when you think no one is watching. The intensity in his voice made me feel exposed and cherished at the same time. That's terrifying, I admitted. The best things usually are. As we cleaned up the scattered paintings, I noticed one more canvas turned toward the wall. What's that one? Marcus hesitated, then turned it around. It was a portrait of me, but not like the figure in the garden painting. This one was intimate, imagined, me in soft light, eyes closed, face peaceful, as if I were sleeping or lost in thought. It was beautiful and vulnerable and so full of longing that it made my chest ache. I painted this after the first time you smiled at me, he said quietly. Really smiled, not just the polite customer service smile. You were talking to Mrs. Chun about her grandson's wedding, and you got this look on your face like you were genuinely happy for her. I went home that night and painted this from memory. You painted me from memory? I've memorized everything about you. The way you bite your lip when you're concentrating. How you always straighten the books on the counter even when they don't need it. The sound you make when you're trying not to laugh at something ridiculous. I've been collecting these moments for months, too afraid to do anything with them. I reached out and touched his face, feeling the slight stubble on his jaw, the warmth of his skin. I'm glad you finally did something with them. When he kissed me, it was soft and questioning, like he was still afraid I might disappear. I kissed him back with all the months of longing I'd kept bottled up, all the words I'd never said, all the dreams I'd been too scared to voice. Stay, he whispered against my lips. Please stay. I stayed. We fell asleep tangled together on his couch, surrounded by the evidence of his heart laid bare in oil and canvas. When I woke, he was already up, making coffee and humming softly under his breath. Good morning, he said, handing me a mug. Sleep well. Better than I have in months, I studied his face in the morning light, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the small scar on his chin I'd never noticed before. I want to paint you too. You paint. I'm about to learn. He laughed, and the sound filled all the empty spaces in my chest. I'll teach you. We have all the time in the world. Looking at him then, surrounded by the art he'd created and the love he'd been brave enough to offer, I knew he was right. We had time to learn each other's languages, to discover new ways of seeing the world, to create something beautiful together. The gift hadn't just been a painting. It had been an invitation to stop hiding, to step into the light, to let someone see me and love me exactly as I was. And in accepting that gift, I'd found something I'd been searching for without even knowing it. Home.